The student's reading in his own subject slows down, and his comprehension becomes less secure. He expresses himself slowly and often fails to convey his ideas exactly. He is disappointed to find that under pressure, he makes a lot of unnecessary mistakes in areas where he knows the correct language forms. His social relations are difficult as he cannot find the right phrase quickly enough to keep a conversation going, so his language often betrays him into dullness, coldness, or worst of all, rudeness. Instead of the students being in control of the language seems now to be in control of the students. How quickly is the world's population growing? In the United States and other developed countries, the current growth rate is very low. In most developing countries, the human population is growing at a rate of 3 people per second. Because of this bustling growth rate, the human population is well on its way to reaching 9 billion within lifetime. History is selective. What history books tell us about the past is not everything that happened, but what historians have selected. They cannot put in everything. Choices have to be made. Choices must similarly be made about which aspects of the past should be formally taught to the next generation in the shape of school history lessons. The best time to visit Canada is during fall months, when mild temperatures and vibrant fall foliage make scenic drives, hiking, and outdoor exploration especially enjoyable. Travel guides often highlight autumn, especially from late September through October, as a peak season for color changes in Ontario, Quebec, and other regions of the country. While blue is one of the most popular colors, it is one of the least appetizing. Food researchers say that when humans searched for food, they learned to avoid toxic or spoiled objects, which were often blue, black, or purple. When food dyed blue is served to study subjects, they lose appetite. When countries assess their annual carbon emissions, they count up their cars and power stations, but bushfires are not included, presumably because they are deemed to be events beyond human control. In Australia, Victoria alone sees several 100,000 hectares burn each year. In both 2004 and more recently, the figure has been over 1 million hectares. Tesla's theoretical work formed the basis of modern alternating current electric power systems. Thomas Edison promised him almost $1 million in today's money to undertake motor and generator improvement. However, when Tesla, the ethical Serb, asked about the money, Edison's reportedly reply was, "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor." The pair became arch rivals. The core of the problem was the immense disparity between the country's productive capacity and the ability of people to consume. Great innovations in productive techniques during and after the war raised the output of industry beyond the purchasing capacity of U.S. farmers and wage earners. Every morning, no matter how late he had been up, my father rose at 5:30, went to his study, wrote for a couple of hours, made us all breakfast, read the paper with my mother, and then went back to work for the rest of the morning. Many years passed before I realized that he did this for a living. Although it comes from a remote region in the Himalayas, this plant now looks entirely at home on the banks of English rivers. Brought to the UK in 1839, it quickly escaped, colonizing riverbanks and damp woodlands. Now it is spreading across Europe, New Zealand, and Canada. In the Himalayas, the plant is held in check by various pests, and it grows and reproduces unhindered. Pluto lost its official status when the International Astronomical Union downsized the solar system from 9 to 8 planets. Although there had been passionate debate at the General Assembly meeting in Prague about the definition of a planet, and whether Pluto met the specifications, the audience greeted the decision to exclude it with applause. At the beginning of each fiscal year, funds are allocated to each state account in accordance with the university's financial plan. Funds are allocated to each account by object of expenditure. Account managers are responsible for ensuring that adequate funds are available in the appropriate object before initiating transactions to use the funds. Lincoln's apparently radical change of mind about his war powers to emancipate slaves was caused by the escalating scope of the war, which convinced him that any measure to weaken the Confederacy and strengthen the Union war effort was justifiable as a military necessity. A young man from a small provincial town, a man without independent wealth, without powerful family connections, and without a university education, moves to London in the late 1580s and, in a remarkably short time, becomes the greatest playwright not of his age alone, but of all time. How is an achievement of magnitude made? How did Shakespeare become Shakespeare? Akimbo, this must be one of the odder-looking words in the language, and puzzles us in part, because it doesn't seem to have any relatives. What's more, it is now virtually a fossil word, until recently almost invariably found in arms akimbo, a posture in which a person stands with hands on hips and elbows sharply bent outward, one signaling impatience or hostility. While yellow is considered an optimistic color, people lose their tempers more often in yellow rooms, and babies will cry more. It is the most difficult color for the eye to take in, so it can be overpowering if overused. The elephant is the largest living land mammal. During evolution, its skeleton has greatly altered from the usual mammal, designed for two main reasons. One is to cope with the great weight of huge, grinding cheek teeth and elongated tusk, making the skull particularly massive. The other is to support the enormous bulk of such a huge body. How do we imagine the unimaginable? If we're asked to think of an object, say, a yellow tulip, a picture immediately forms in our mind's eye. But what if we try to imagine a concept such as the square root of negative number? There are three main interpretations of the English Revolution. The longest-lasting interpretation was that the revolution was the almost inevitable outcome of an age-old power struggle between Parliament and Crown. The second sees it as a class struggle and a lead-up to the French and other revolutions. Finally, the third interpretation sees the other two as too fixed, not allowing for unpredictability, and that the outcome could have gone either way. Global warming is defined as an increase in the average temperature of the Earth's atmosphere. This trend began in the middle of the 20th century and is one of the major environmental concerns of scientists and governmental officials worldwide. The changes in temperature result mostly from the effect of increased concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. The speaker is a marine biologist who became interested in the strandlopers, an ancient people who lived on the coastline because of their connection to the sea. Their way of life intrigued him. As a child, he had spent a lot of time by the sea, exploring and collecting things, so he began to study them and discovered some interesting information about their way of life, how they hunted, what tools they used, and so on. The climate for doing business improved in Egypt more than in any other country last year, according to a global study that revealed a wave of company-oriented reforms across the Middle East. The World Bank rankings, which look at business regulations, also showed that the pace of business reforms in Eastern Europe was overtaking East Asia. Modern buildings have to achieve certain performance requirements, at least to satisfy those of building codes, to provide a safe, healthy, and comfortable environment. However, these conditioned environments demand resources in energy and materials, which are both limited in supply, to build and operate. Not a lot is known about how the transportation of goods by water first began. Large cargo boats were being used in some parts of the world up to 5,000 years ago. However, sea trade became more widespread when large sailing boats traveled between ports, carrying spices, perfumes, and objects made by hand. Studying abroad is a very popular option for students who come from a wealthy family. Most people believe that overseas experience provides a deeper understanding of cultures and develops communication skills. While this may be true, not all of these new experiences are useful for finding a job. Employers tend to value interpersonal skills and industry knowledge more than cultural background. The primary application we're targeting at first is to give people a decision aid during rehabilitation following an acute knee injury to help them understand when they can perform particular activities and when they can move to different intensities of particular activities. A useful thing to take a crack at. Three professors from Hamburg University's medical faculty traveled last month to Ingeborg's sitting room in East Berlin to test her on the work she carried out in pre-war Germany. They were impressed, and a special ceremony took place at Hamburg University Medical Center on Tuesday, in which she finally received the PhD that the Nazis stole from her. Moods may also have an effect on how information is processed by influencing the extent to which judges rely on pre-existing, internal information or focus on new, external information. Positive moods promote more holistic and top-down processing style, while negative moods recruit more stimulus-driven and bottom-up processing. This finding is understandable in certain cases in spite of its high significance. That is because energy efficiency of building operation just represents a single aspect of sustainability. By the same token, an energy-efficient building with poor building material choices may not be considered sustainable. The numbers on U.S. student debt, after all, are truly staggering. The average 2015 U.S. university graduate who took out loans to help pay for tuition enters the workforce with $35,000 in student debt. In the U.S., total student debt exceeds $1.15 trillion, dwarfing, for instance, the nation's credit card debt. For centuries, Atlantis has been one of the Western world's favorite legends, a tantalizing blend of fantasy and mystery. Stories tell of a rich and glorious empire that was lost to the sea, where some hope its ruins still lie, waiting to be discovered. A smoking ban is a public policy that includes criminal laws and health regulations that prohibit smoking in certain public places and workspaces. There are varying definitions of smoking employed in this legislation. The strictest definitions define smoking as being the inhalation of any tobacco substance, while the loosest define smoking as possessing any lit tobacco product. Long isolated from Western Europe, Russia grew up without participating in the development like the Reformation, where many Europeans, taking pride in their unique culture, find dubious value. Russia is, as a result, the most unusual member of European family, if indeed it is European at all. The question is still open to debate, particularly among Russians themselves. Hundreds of millions of people eat fast food every day without giving it much thought. They just unwrap their hamburgers and dig in. An hour or so later, when the burger's all gone and the wrapper's been tossed into the bin, the whole meal has already been forgotten. Public demand for education has remained strong, reflecting the importance of education as a means of social progress. Aware of the added value of education to the world of work, the government continues to innovate and update the education system in order to produce a qualified and competent workforce. A unique characteristic of online shopping environments is that they allow vendors to create retail interfaces with highly interactive features. One desirable form of interactivity from a consumer perspective is the implementation of sophisticated tools to assist shoppers in their purchase decisions by customizing the electronic shopping environment to their individual preferences. Imagine living all your life as the only family on your street. Then, one morning, you open the front door and discover houses all around you. You see neighbors tending their gardens and children walking to school. Where did all the people come from? What if the answer turned out to be that they had always been there, you just hadn't seen them? Before the discovery of Australia, people in the Old World were convinced that all swans were white, an unassailable belief as it seemed completely confirmed by empirical evidence. The sighting of the first black swan might have been an interesting surprise for a few ornithologists, but that is not where the significance of the story lies. When we recycle, used materials are converted into new products, reducing the need to consume natural resources. If used materials are not recycled, new products are made by extracting fresh, raw material from the earth through mining and forestry. Recycling helps conserve important raw materials and protects natural habitats for the future. Thus, a country might possess a sizable rural population, but have an economic system in which the interests of the voters were predominantly related to their incomes, not to their occupations or location. And in such a country, the political system would be unlikely to include an important agrarian party. The training of an actor is an intensive process which requires curiosity, courage, and commitment. You will learn how to prepare for rehearsal, how to rehearse, and how to use independent and proactive processes that inform you to do the best work possible for both stage and screen. Globalization has affected what we eat in ways we are only beginning to understand. Modern food production is no longer related to our biological needs, but is in direct conflict with them. The relationship between diet and our fertility, our cancer, heart disease, and mental illness is becoming clear. Yet much of our food is nutritionally bankrupt. Companies will want to be known not just for the financial results they generate, but equally for the imprint they leave on society as a whole. First, ensuring that their products contribute positively. Second, operating in a way that approaches a net neutral impact to the natural environment. And third, cherishing their people. For the first 2 or 3 years after the Second World War, a new title would often sell out within a few months of publication. However, unless public demand for the book was unusually high, they were rarely able to reprint it. With paper stocks strictly rationed, they could not afford to use up precious paper or tie up their limited capital with a reprint. Today, telecommunication is widespread, and devices that assist the progress are common in many parts of the world. There is also a vast array of networks that connect these devices, including computer, telephone, and cable networks. Computer communication across the Internet, such as email and instant messaging, is just one of many examples of telecommunication. Food is one of the most important things you'll ever buy. And yet, most people never bother to think about their food and where it comes from. People spend a lot more time worrying about what kind of blue jeans to wear, what kind of video games to play, what kind of computers to buy. Conservation scientists have long tried to map how much of the planet remains undegraded by human activity. Previous estimates using satellite imagery or raw demographic data found anywhere from 20 to 40% of the globe was free from obvious human incursions, such as roads, light pollution, or the gaping scars of deforestation. But an intact forest canopy can hide an emptied-out ecosystem below. How quickly this occurs depends on the dynamics of fertility, mortality, and overseas migration. While a moderate pace of demographic change allows for gradual adjustment of the economy and policies to the changing population demographics, rapid changes are more difficult to manage. As a result, governments and society as a whole may need to take actions to address these issues. Summerhill School was regarded with considerable suspicion by the educational establishment. Lessons were optional for pupils at the school, and the government of the school was carried out by a school council, of which all the pupils and staff were members, with everyone having equal voting rights. We've spent a lot of money over the last 70 years on flood control, and it's protected millions of people and has saved us billions of dollars. We've built dams to hold back the waters. We've built levees to keep the water off the people, and we've raised the ones that were originally started in 1718. We can see from the X-rays that at an early stage of painting, a window was painted in at the left of the portrait. It seems that there may have been 2 windows in the initial design for the portrait, or that the window was moved at an early stage. Written by 3 eminent professors, it has been updated to reflect the shifts of sociological thought in the last 5 years, making it the most comprehensive, authoritative, and up-to-date dictionary available. It is essential reading for all students and teachers of sociology and other related courses, and also the general reader. Most babies start developing their hearing while still in the womb, prompting some hopeful parents to play classical music to their pregnant bellies. Some research even suggests that infants are listening to adult speech as early as 10 weeks before birth, gathering the basic building blocks of their family's native tongue. The whole purpose of making notes is to aid your learning. It is important to go back over them within a day of making them to make sure they make sense and make them legible for future revisions. Also, going back over them should highlight the key questions of areas in which you want to do further reading. The word radical from the Latin word for roots means anyone who advocates fundamental change in the political system. Literally, a radical is one who proposes to attack some political or social problem by going deep into the social or economic fabric to get at the root cause and alter this basic weakness. This is a new, accessible, and engaging textbook written by academics who also work as consultants with organizations undergoing change. It offers a unique combination of rigorous theoretical exploration together with practical insights from working with those who are actually responsible for managing change. There were various explanations for volcano behavior before the structure of the Earth's mantle, as a semi-solid material was developed. For decades, awareness that compression and radioactive materials may be heat sources was discounted, and volcanic action was often attributed to chemical reactions and a thin layer of molten rock near the surface. In the late 16th and 17th centuries, many English, French, and Dutch emigrants went to North America in search of gold and silver. But they did not find it. Instead, settlers were forced to support themselves by cultivating crops that they could sell in Europe, like tobacco, indigo, and rice. There is a tendency, especially in the popular press, to concentrate on the negative effects of immigration. In that context, this lecture listing the benefits it brings to more developed nations is much more welcome. Also, it is delivered in a lively and amusing style. "380 years after his death, William Shakespeare remains the central author of the English-speaking world. He is the most quoted poet and the most regularly produced playwright, and now among the most popular screenwriters as well. Why is that, and who is he? Why do so many people think his writing is so great? What meanings did his plays have in his own time, and how do we read, speak, or listen to his words now?" At a time when stress levels are soaring, rates of depression are increasing, and the gap between rich and poor is ever widening. We believe that giving can play a positive role in helping people to feel connected to those around them and generate a sense of purpose and hope. When we give, we feel valued, useful, and happy. Your tutor helps you make the most of your time at university by giving you guidance and support along the way. All new students are allocated a personal tutor who will encourage you to get the most out of your course, direct you to other sources of support, and help you achieve your goals. An innovative new product or service can give a firm a head start over its rivals, which can be difficult for a new entrant to overcome. If the new technology is also patented, then other firms cannot simply copy its design. It is legally protected. Efficiency is not your friend when it comes to cognitive growth. In order to keep our brains making new connections and keep them active, you need to keep moving on to another challenging activity as soon as you reach the point of mastery in the one you were engaging in. The Royal Institution is an organization that has been around for 209 years. Many of the people that have worked here have been scientists themselves, including Michael Faraday. He made the discoveries that made generating and using electricity much easier, making it possible for us all to switch on lights, cook our dinner, play games, consoles, much, much more. Using an X-ray laser, a research team has investigated how water heats up under extreme conditions. In the process, the scientists were able to observe water that remained liquid even at temperatures of more than 170 degrees Celsius. The investigation revealed an anomalous dynamic behavior of water, which is of fundamental importance for the analysis of sensitive samples using X-ray lasers. in spite of the spectacularly high quality of life for the vast majority of the people who live in the European Union, its inhabitants seem obsessed by the region's relative decline in the world. Slow economic growth rates and high unemployment have reinforced the impression that Europe is unhappy with today and unsure of tomorrow. A study found that the research funded by the soft drinks industry had different results from research funded by other sources, and went on to suggest that they may have been biased by the research itself. The whole point of the scientific methods is to ensure the research results are not influenced by the source of funding. The student's reading in his own subject slows down, and his comprehension becomes less secure. He expresses himself slowly and often fails to convey his ideas exactly. He is disappointed to find that under pressure, he makes a lot of unnecessary mistakes in areas where he knows the correct language forms. His social relations are difficult as he cannot find the right phrase quickly enough to keep a conversation going, so his language often betrays him into dullness, coldness, or worst of all, rudeness. Instead of the students being in control of the language seems now to be in control of the students. How quickly is the world's population growing? In the United States and other developed countries, the current growth rate is very low. In most developing countries, the human population is growing at a rate of 3 people per second. Because of this bustling growth rate, the human population is well on its way to reaching 9 billion within lifetime. History is selective. What history books tell us about the past is not everything that happened, but what historians have selected. They cannot put in everything. Choices have to be made. Choices must similarly be made about which aspects of the past should be formally taught to the next generation in the shape of school history lessons. The best time to visit Canada is during fall months, when mild temperatures and vibrant fall foliage make scenic drives, hiking, and outdoor exploration especially enjoyable. Travel guides often highlight autumn, especially from late September through October, as a peak season for color changes in Ontario, Quebec, and other regions of the country. The situation is similar to a pregnant woman that has twin babies in her belly, says Avi Loeb of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. He's proposing the idea in a paper that's been accepted for publication in the Astrophysical Journal Letters. Few things in the world produce such amazement as one's first glimpse of the Grand Canyon. It took nature more than 2 billion years to create this vast wonder, in some places 17 miles wide, largely through the relentless force of the Colorado River, which runs 277 miles along its length, a mile beneath its towering rims. Many papers you write in college will require you to include quotes from one or more sources. Even if you don't have to do it, integrating a few quotes into your writing can add life and persuasiveness to your arguments. The key is to use quotes to support a point you're trying to make rather than just include them to fill space. There are perhaps three ways of looking at furniture. Some people see it as purely functional and useful and don't bother themselves with aesthetics. Others see it as essential to civilized living and concern themselves with design and how the furniture will look in a room. In other words, function combined with aesthetics, and yet others see furniture as a form of art. The border itself between Mexico and the United States is fraught with a mix of urban and desert terrain and spans over 1,900 miles. Both the uninhabited areas of the border and urban areas are where the most drug trafficking and illegal crossings take place. Crime is prevalent in urban cities like El Paso, Texas, and San Diego, California. Currently, integration is increasingly needed in the business environment. This need emerges from the efficiency and synergy requirements necessary in a complex and turbulent environment. In other words, integration is needed to facilitate coordination, which is again related to the building of competitive advantage. Rius took a stab at settling the argument with a meta-analysis, a study of studies, on whether people can really perceive better than CD quality sound. He analyzed data from 18 studies, including more than 400 participants and nearly 13,000 listening tests. Overall, listeners picked out the better than CD quality track 52.3% of the time. Statistically significant, if not all that impressive. For the purposes of argument, culture is divided into material and non-material, and the speaker's aim is to show how they both affect each other. Material developments in tools and technology can affect non-material culture, our customs and beliefs, and the other way around. Genetics is used as an example as it has changed the way we think about life, but also our beliefs have affected its rate of development. It may well change the way you live yet again. Welcome to World Mobile Commerce, where your handheld device, be it a mobile phone, a personal digital assistant, or any other wireless application, will soon be used for commercial transactions. Skeptical? Consider these facts. In Japan, mobile phones are used for location-based services where the mobile service providers tie up with a host of other players such as restaurants, car rental companies, and so on. When the mobile user enters that zone, messages from all these players are flashed on the mobile device. Location-based services are proved in several other countries as well. First discovered in 2007, fast radio bursts continue to defy explanation. These cosmic chirps last 1,000th of a second. The characteristics of the radio pulses suggested that they came from galaxies billions of light years away. However, new works points to a much closer origin-flaring star within our own galaxy. Written examinations are a fact of life for most high school and university students. However, recent studies have shown that this traditional form of assessment may not be an accurate indicator of academic performance. Tests have shown that many students experience anxiety during exam weeks, which leads to poorer results. As a result, some learning institutions are replacing exams with alternative assessments such as group work and oral presentations. Legal writing is usually less discursive than writing in other humanities subjects, and precision is more important than variety. Sentence structure should not be too complex. It is usually unnecessary to make extensive use of adjectives or adverbs, and consistency of terms is often required. Have you ever pictured a world without light? Just think how much we rely on man-made light sources in our lives. Without engineers, we wouldn't be able to live the way we do. No streetlights, no TV, no computer displays, no house lights. Engineers design and build all these things. Many individuals have unwittingly contributed to this book through sharing ideas with us as colleagues, students, practitioners, tourists, and residents of destination areas. They are too numerous to thank individually. And indeed, it is not possible to isolate exactly their specific contributions. Regular exercise releases brain chemicals key for memory, concentration, and mental sharpness at the same time as lifting your mood, and lowering stress and anxiety, all of which contribute to brain health. Studies show that regular exercise helps you manage complex tasks, organize and razor sharpen your focus, which is great for those long revision sessions or particularly complex exam questions. An industry or workplace often has its own terms for certain items, places, or groups of people, and university is no different. Here we have attempted to explain some of the terms you may come across on our websites that are specific to higher education. The physical location of a restaurant in the competitive landscape of the city has long been known as a major factor in its likely success or failure. Once restaurants are established in such environments, they can do little about their location. All they can do is work to improve customer access to their premises. Restaurateurs often do this by engaging in battles with local authorities about car parking. We seek to improve learners' experience of education at college and help them to aspire, achieve, and progress. We must embed equality and diversity in everything we do, both as a provider and an employer. We hope to prepare our students for work, higher education, and citizenship by equipping our staff with the skills to meet this agenda. To some extent, attendance at cultural venues and events is influenced by a person's age and the composition of the household in which they live. For example, those people in households with dependent children were more likely to visit zoological parks and aquariums than people living in single-person households. The course considers the ways in which thinkers have responded to the particular political problems of their day, and the ways in which they contribute to a broader conversation about human goods and needs, justice, democracy, and the proper relationship of the individual to the state.